Everybody, and thank you so much for your patience with us figuring out some of these technical difficulties. Like Susan said, we did meet yesterday to run through all these things together and make sure all of our connections were working. And but sometimes we just have those slip up, so that's okay. I hope all of you are staying warm this morning. I know I do live in Huntington and we got lots of snow and ice, so I hope all of you are staying safe and staying warm with your families. So this morning we are going to talk about the foundations of reading in an after-school program. And I'm Samantha Statler. I am one of the five state early literacy specialists working with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, which is a partnership between the West Virginia Department of Education and the June Harless Center at Marshall University. So I'm excited to be here with you this morning. And just to share a little bit more about our work with the campaign is that we understand that schools and teachers are held accountable for all children achieving high quality education every single day. And we understand that you cannot do these things alone. And it is so important for us to get our stakeholders involved and our communities involved with the research and the resources that we have. That way, in turn, our communities and our families can also help support our schools and teachers. We do have four areas of focus that we focus on with the West Virginia Campaign for Grade Level Reading, which are school readiness, attendance, high quality instruction, and extended learning. So with that school readiness piece, readiness grades are actually considered pre-K through first. So we do a lot of focus from birth to pre-K. With attendance, we really focus on fighting that that chronic absenteeism. And with high quality instruction, we believe that every child should be given the opportunity to be involved in high quality instruction. And then our extended learning piece is that we are providing programming for our students outside of that school day, just to help continue close that achievement gap. And our mission is to serve our communities in West Virginia by leading a literacy campaign that connects stakeholders, like I said, with research and resources in order to provide the best opportunities for all of our children in West Virginia. So our goals today for our session is that you will leave with an understanding of how important after school programs can be and summer programs, how to prepare and choose your materials, where you should start with your instruction, and the importance of those three foundational skills of reading. And you will also leave the session with some practical and engaging instructional strategies and activity ideas. So my colleague Christy and I have both created digital folders full of resources that will be shared with you by Susan. And we also have links built into our presentation so that once you get a copy of the presentation, you will also be able to just click on those links and pull up the documents that go with it. So we've put together a lot of nice resources for you to have for kind of a starting point. So when I talk about extended learning opportunities, I am talking about after school programs, as well as any programs that might take place during the summer, and just any other instructional programming that takes place outside of our school day. So let's talk about what the research says. So when students attend an after-school program, you can see that 68% of them improve completing their homework and their class participation actually goes up. 60% of our students improve their behavior in class, and 1 in 2 students improve their math and reading grades. And even our parents and guardians will say that providing after school programs really helps them have relief of where their children are during those after school hours, because it is during the hours of 2 and 6 that are the highest, like, peak times for crime. So knowing that your child is somewhere safe, and not only are they safe, but they're learning and they're engaging in activities that will only help them reach their full academic potential. Let's talk a little bit about preparation. So why does being prepared matter? So I don't know about you, but sometimes I just find myself running late for things. But if I have prepared my materials that I'm going to use with my students the next day, if I've prepared them the night before, let's say I do get caught in traffic or I'm just running late. Once I get there, I can immediately start working with my students. So making sure that you have all of your materials in place, maybe the night before, or if you get up a little early that day to prepare them, just give yourself some time to get all of your materials together. And it's going to make you a more effective provider. There's not going to be any downtime or any lost instructional time or time wasted. And overall, you're just going to be happier and in a better mood. If you show up, maybe working with your after school program and you're late and your materials are all over the place, you are going to be grumpy and grouchy, and your students are definitely going to catch on to that. So it's all around just going to make you a happier provider for these students. How can you prepare for your students? So let's talk about the difference between planning and preparing. So maybe you've got a really nice activity together for your students that you're going to do with your after school or summer students on Monday. But when you get there, you don't have any of your materials ready. Maybe you were going to use technology and the internet's down. So there's definitely a difference in planning and preparing. Something else I really want to talk about is how important it is to have those procedures in place, especially when we're talking about our elementary learners. Um, some schools will have school-wide procedures, and I'm thinking of like CHAMPS is a school-wide behavior management plan that some schools use, but maybe like classroom to classroom. Some examples of these are, raise your hand when you have something to say, or wait until you're called upon by your teacher or instructor. Don't get out of your seat unless asking. So there are different procedures that you can focus on, but you definitely want to have some for your students, regardless if you're kind of in a small area where you're teaching, or maybe if you are in a classroom. You want to make sure that you have those routines in place. That way there is behavior management and organization, because as a previous classroom teacher, I know that if I didn't prepare my students for, how do they need to ask me to go to the bathroom, how do they need to communicate with me that they have a question, if I didn't have those things in place, it would be total chaos. So those are just some things to kind of think about, and I encourage you to talk to some teachers maybe at the school you'll be working with and just kind of ask them what procedures they may use in their classroom. Again, we're talking about the importance of gathering your materials, making sure that you have everything together. And a good example of this, let's say that I was working with a small group of students, and let's say I had other students in the room I was working in, but they were all doing independent activities. So I get my group of students, I sit at a table with them, and we're going to read some books together, a little decodable book. Well, once I get back to my table, I realize, man, I forgot those books over, by the door. So I'm like, okay, boys and girls, I'll be right back. Like, don't move, don't talk. I get up, I walk over there, come back, that's a minute wasted. I pass out the books, we start talking about the book, and then I realized, man, I really wanted to use like pointers with my students, give them all little individual pointers so we could point about to those high frequency words. So then I'm like, okay, boys and girls, just give me one more minute. Let me run over to my desk and find our pointers. So then I get up and I'm shuffling around to my desk, and who's just like, what are these students doing while I'm up away from the table? I would like to think they're all doing what I've asked them to do by being quiet or following along in their book, but we know that that doesn't always happen. So let's say I get back to my table, I'm passing out the highlighting tape, and we're on a roll. And the last thing I wanted to do with this group of students is use whisper phones. They're these little plastic phones that students can use to whisper read in, and they can hear themselves. They're really neat. And let's say I wanted to use those, and I'm like, oh, boys and girls, the whisper phones are over in the cabinet. So I'm going to have to go get those. So here I go again, getting up during my group instruction and stopping instruction. And again, who knows what those students are doing? Maybe now they're, distracting other individual students. So it is so important to have all of your teaching materials and your materials for your students together. let's talk about the importance of developing listening skills. And I know sometimes as adults, because most of us have these skills, it can be a little harder to kind of set your mind back to being a young child when you were developing these skills. And usually children start school having these skills, but just in case this is an area that they would need more work, there are activities you can do to help them with their listening. And games is one of the best way to work on this skill. And I am going to share with you some listening skills in the next slide, but let's say that I were to sit down with my group of students and say, okay, boys and girls, today, let's work on our listening lesson. Now, listen to this. Listen to me say the word game. Okay, boys and girls, we are going to play some listening games. I'm sure students would be much more excited if you were to use just that term games, because anytime that we can bring in the word games, students are going to get excited. They're going to think they're fun. So, some of the listening activities that I'm going to share with you, and again, you can see there is a linked listening activities here that will take you to that shared document that I told you about that has some other resources in there. This first listening skill, they're using a pocket chart and maybe they are matching pictures that all have the beginning sound. Another activity you could do with students is have them listen to an audio book or something on audio. And there's a lot of things available now on the internet, but even those, good old fashioned CD players, and you can have students maybe write in response to that or draw a picture in response to what they're listening to. Something else you could do is kind of create a musical sound wall or area. And as you can see in our picture, a lot of these tools on that sound wall are just things found around the house. I see like a muffin pan, and there are some just different pots and pans there that students can kind of play with and understanding the different sounds that they make. Um, Something else you could do as an activity is play a sound and ask them, is this a sound that like you can see? Like whenever if you're tapping something, like, can they see that sound being made? Or is it a sound that's further away? And just a good activity that I used to like to do with students is just get really quiet and we would just listen to all the sounds we could hear in the hallway, sounds that we could hear of other students. My classroom was also right next to the playground, so we always had a lot of noise there too. So just really having students understand the different things that they are hearing and maybe what those sounds are coming from. So that kind of preps them um, for this next piece that we're going to talk about. So phonological awareness is just that ability to hear and manipulate different sound parts in words. And I did want to share this piece with you here. That is a list of all the different phonological awareness skills. And I know it can be daunting. It is a very long list, but you will get a copy of this list too in your resources. Just some different things for you to keep in mind that you can work on with these students. And we are going to talk about these a little more in depth. So why is it important to be able to hear and understand the different parts in sounds? So this is the beginning stages of students understanding that words sound differently, different letters sound differently, and everything with phonological awareness is oral. So you don't have to print, you don't have to have any print or any specific books at this point. These are all activities that you can just do orally with students. And the research says the ability to hear and manipulate these sounds plays a really important part in beginning reading for our students. Here are some different instructional activities that you could do. And like I said, I do have activities listed there on the menu of activities. And I've also included a free assessment or just a test. So if you were kind of unsure, let's say you were working with a group of first grade or kindergarten students and you were just a little unsure of maybe what to work on with these students, this is a great free assessment that you could give them. I also included the directions on how to do that. It's very easy to follow. So you could do nursery rhymes, practicing nursery rhymes, reading books that have rhymes, tapping out syllables and words. So you could say the word cat and have them type out the syllables, or tap out, I'm sorry, the syllables in that word. And then just practicing beginning parts of words and ending parts of words. Something else that I want to encourage you to do is, at the school that you'll be working in, ask the school librarian if they have nursery rhymes or books there that you can use. I also, encourage you to go to your public library, but I do think asking the school librarian would be a really good place to start. And of course, we do have a lot of free resources available to us on the internet as well. So phonemic awareness. So this is just this is actually a part of phonological awareness. So you can think of phonological awareness as this like umbrella term of all of these skills. And phonemic awareness is a skill under phonological awareness, and it is the hardest. It is the most complex for our students to learn. So it's when they have that ability to hear and change sounds. So you can see in the picture example that I included for you, they were focusing on changing that last sound or the final sound in this activity. Oop, sorry. So those will be the different kinds of activities that you can focus on whenever you are working on phonemic awareness. And we'll talk just a little bit more about that one. Um, so if you were going to give a student a word, and this is the example, let's say I give them the word bat. Tell me the sounds in bat. They would say b, at. So you could go through and give them 5 or 10 words, have them tell you the different sounds, have them tell you what's the beginning sound, what's the ending sound, what's the middle sound. And then again, just changing, maybe you want to change the B and make it a k. What would my new word be? And students have to sit and think. And these are pretty tough for students to do, but they're also very fun. They enjoy these kinds of activities. So why is this important? So phonemic awareness is important because it really teaches students to pay attention to those individual sounds, and it really just helps them get ready for that print piece. So these things are still done orally, but we're getting ready to introduce print and text. And this is, what the word bat may look like, and this is the letters used, and what sounds go with those letters. So we're just kind of priming them for that phonics instruction. So here are some phonemic awareness instructional activities that you can use. And I have listed these out in your menu of activities along with what that activity means. And these are pretty fun to do too. Now I am going to play a video of one of my colleagues who is working on some phonemic awareness activities. And the materials that they're using are just a tray they have at home, some sugar, Play-Doh, toothpick, and shaving cream. I think the one I'm showing you just has sugar, but this just kind of shows you can use some of these household items. And it does take this video just a minute to start, a couple seconds, so just be patient. Here we go.
All right, I'm here with Aria. Aria, can you say hi? Hi. And she's going to help me show you some of my favorite wordplay activities that you can do at home. So Aria has some sugar in front of her, and she's going to use it to spell out some words. Aria, could you spell the word hot? And again, we're just using materials that we already have at home to play with language and words. Great job, Aria. Could you sound out that word for us? Hot. Hot. Great job. Can we try another word? Yeah. All right, let's do another one. Ready? Mm-hmm. How about the word tap? Very good. Could you sound out that word for us? Right, now Aria has some Play-Doh and a toothpick, and we're going to be doing the same activity, writing some more words. Aria, could you write us the word map? Again, Aria is using Play-Doh and a toothpick and materials that we just found around our house to do some wordplay activities today. She's writing the word map. Very good. Could you sound out that word for us? Map. Good job. Aria, could we write another word? Yeah. Another way you could do this activity would be to provide your child with the letter sounds and ask them to tell you what the word is. So Aria, this time I'm going to give you 3 sounds and then ask you to tell me what words they make. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. The first sound is T. The next sound is Ah. Very good. And the last sound is P. Good job. Can you sound it out and tell us what word those sounds make? Up, top. Great job.
Okay, so that was just a little example of what some of those activities could look like. And anytime that you can bring in those hands-on activities and materials that students can use, it's really going to help them be a little more engaged in the activity that they are doing. So I do see that I can't see the chat, but Susan has told me that we have a question about if students are maybe deaf or hard of hearing, how would I recommend phonics instruction? I've never had a student who is deaf or that has been hard of hearing. So that is something I might have to look a little more into to give you a good answer. But I would definitely think having students looking at your mouth when producing sounds and producing words. And I don't know the name, but I will definitely get your name from Susan, and I will look into that a little more so I can give you a better example and a better idea of how to work with those students. When we're talking about phonics and the alphabetic principle, it's that students are able to understand that words are made of letters and that those letters represent sound. So phonics kind of marries the two, that this is the sound that, W makes W. And then you can use W and other letters to create words. Okay. And so one of the first things that students need to know is they need to have knowledge of their letters in the alphabet. And there are students who will come into kindergarten and they'll know some of their letters, but not all students, have that chance to go to pre-K or to go to a daycare that is doing some academic related items with them. So making sure that they know the letters of the alphabet and then know the sounds that go with each of those letters is extremely important. And I have listed, we'll get there in just a second, some instructional activities that you can do with students to help them have better understanding of letters of the alphabet and the sounds that go with them. So if you are working with students who are working on letters of the alphabet or those sounds, the letter sounds, you want to make sure that you are modeling for them and that you are showing them, B says B, and that you are also writing that letter for them and letting them see what it looks like. And then they can just kind of put that letter and sound together in their mind. Have them, tell you back, what sound does B make? B. And then have them also write the letter while they're making that sound. So it's really important that they have good modeling and guided practice, which just means you are kind of helping them in those beginning stages when they're just kind of learning those letters and sounds. Here are some different alphabet knowledge activities using alphabet books. Again, I encourage you to ask your school librarian. Anytime you can use those hands-on activities, matching uppercase and lowercase letters. That's something that really helps students learn their letters, teaching the students the letters in their names and kind of playing around with the letters in their names is something they really enjoy to do. And I also added some different activities in that menu for you as well. The next skill that students will need is that understanding of print or just that print awareness. And what does that mean? Well, that means that, students understand that words mean something, they have meaning, and the print is what we read, and that we read from left to right. And we write left to right, which is something you can make a connection for them there too. And, when you are reading a book, I don't have a book here to show you, but when you are reading a book and you turn a page, you start back over on the left and you sweep over to the right. So just those basic understanding of like how a book works, what does a book look like? And something that I did, I have a 2.5-year-old little girl, and I have always sat with her while she's looked at books and, made sure that when I've read books to her, like I show her, like, this is how we read a book. And then I'll turn it upside down and say, we don't read a book this way. We can't read it upside down. Sometimes, she'll start at the back of the book and I'll kind of just reiterate to her, like, let's flip it over. We have to start at the front. So just those little easy things that, like I said, sometimes as adults we have forgotten about because we've just forgotten maybe how we've learned those things. Those are really important things to do with students. Anytime you read a book to students, I highly encourage you to talk about, what's the author? What do they do? Who's the illustrator? What do they do? And just kind of reiterate those basic principles of a book. I think those are really important. Um, some different things that you can do to just kind of help reinforce that the concepts of print is to pointing to words and books as you're reading to them. And I know there are some schools who have those really big books, like you saw on our previous slide there, that book on the ground is a really large book. Those are great resources to use when you are teaching print concepts, making sure that you're pointing out like words and their finger spaces and what different letters. So maybe you want to start, your activity with your students every day by like, this says morning message, but you could have an afternoon message. Or if you are doing like a summer program, you could still say morning message. Maybe you could start with a message to them of what they're going to do that day. And as you read it to them or have students volunteer to read parts of it, depending on what grade level you're working with, you could point out, how many words are in our morning message? How many letters are in the word morning. Just those simple things. And again, anytime you can connect that to when we write, we want to make sure we have spaces between our words. And, that will help them too later on when they are writing a little more. And another just quick activity that I really like to do with my students, I would have each student in my small group dictate a sentence or say a sentence out loud. And then I would write it down for them. And we would cut out, like I would use a big sentence strip, or you could just use a piece of paper. I would cut out each of the words and give it to them and have the students like put it back in order of the order they told me. And then talk about what's the first word, what's the last word in that sentence, where should a capital letter go, where should your ending punctuation go. So you can really pull in so many different skills whenever you're working on these things. And we're going to talk a little bit about phonics. And I have this picture here and it makes me laugh because it really can be complicated. And, phonics is that instruction that's going to help our beginning readers understand how letters are, they have that connection with sounds, and that when we put letters together, we're actually building words and then we can build those sentences. And this is, why it's just breaking the code of them understanding that letters make sounds, that this sound corresponds with this letter. And again, when you put those together, you can form words. So here are a few instructional practices. And I really
Ma'am,
want
this is Christy. Someone has their hand up. I think Sherry Swint might have wanted to ask a question.
to, okay. Um, I don't, I'm not sure if participants can unmute themselves. I think they just have to use the chat box.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. But I can't see the chat box. I don't, if she can.
I don't see a question in the chat. Sherry, did you have a question that you wanted to type in the chat box?
And I'm not seeing Sherry
Oh, she said no.
on her.
Okay.
That's
Sorry about
correct.
that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Thank you. And I don't want to click off of anything because I don't want this to mess up. So thank you, Christy. Um, so I just wanted to share this with you. These are the recommendations like for a classroom teacher to work on phonics and phonological awareness. So in early kindergarten, they need like 15 to 20 minutes daily. And then as you move on, whenever you start teaching more of that um, the phonics piece as far as words, building words and making sentences, they recommend 20 to 30 minutes daily. And that, I mean, I know that doesn't sound like a lot of time, but if you've had the chance to be in a classroom for like a whole day, and if you haven't, I challenge you to do that sometime. 20 minutes, 30 minutes is a lot of time. So it's really important that, you know, you can help our teachers out by working on some of these phonological awareness activities and skills with these students. Even if they are, you know, third, fourth, and fifth graders, they still like to be challenged and, you know, thinking of words that might rhyme or talking about syllables and longer words. They enjoy those kinds of activities. So any time that you can put toward just continuing to build upon these foundational skills is definitely going to help those students. Here are some different instructional activities that I've shared with you in that digital folder. Um, I put some blending mats on there. And when you open these resources up, you might have a better understanding of how to use them. And again, I've put directions in there on how they work. So sorting words and talking about why words are sorted a certain way. And you know, these words have this certain pattern and maybe these words have a different one. And so there's a couple other activities listed for you there and just some more in-depth ones in that menu of activities. And we're going to talk about fluency, which is how accurately a student is able to read a text. So, and something that I would always tell my students is you want them to be reading the way that we speak. So, when I have students who are reading like a robot, I point that out to them and I say, you know, do we talk like this? And they're like, oh no, you're right. Like, sorry, it keeps advancing on its own. But and so that's something that's really important. So because sometimes students have a hard time understanding that it's not about reading as fast as they can. Fluency is not about that. It's about them reading at a conversational pace and that they are stopping at periods, pausing at commas. You know, if they have a question mark, that they are changing their voice to make it kind of go up when they're asking a question. And these are some things that fluent readers will do. Again, they'll read at a smooth pace. They're not having to stop and decode words. Reading questions like questions and exclamation marks with excitement. So you better believe anytime I read aloud to my students, I always just like overdid it with question marks and exclamation points. So you, and if you're not used to doing that, you might feel a little bit silly, but it is a great way to model to students how to read with expression and how to follow those punctuation marks and those things. Um, you know, changing the tone to match the message of the story, changing your voice for different characters in the story. Those are all little things that you can do to model for these students. And why is it important? So, without fluency, that comprehension or that making meaning of what they're reading can never happen. You know, if students are so focused on just decoding the words or trying to understand what is this word, if they can't stand out, if they don't know the word cat and they're too busy sounding it out, they have no clue what that sentence is going to be about because they're so stuck on okay, what's this word, what's this sound. but just practicing that fluency of having them maybe read just sentences at a time. And again, this is really improved with just continued practice. And this can be something that you can make a part of your lessons, like I said, every single day. And here are just some instructional activities that you can do with your students. And again, I've included these with some other ones in that menu of activities. Modeling. So like I said, modeling read alouds to them can really help them grasp, oh, that's what a fluent reader sounds like. Repeated reading. So maybe you are going to read a sentence and then you're going to have student A read that sentence and student B read that sentence. So they're repeating after you. So they should be following, exactly how you're taught, how you're reading. Choral reading is done together, like as a group. So, and maybe like in this picture, the teacher would read the first sentence and then all of the students would read the first sentence together. Sometimes that can be a little bit difficult, but I just always like to reiterate to the students that we're trying to read it together. And and I always share this too, if you're going to go watch like a choir, or if you're going to go watch a group of people sing, they all try to sing at the same time. They're trying to stay in sync with one another. So that's a really good example of what you want your students to be doing during that choral reading time. And then echo reading is maybe when you're reading something and then they take turns reading it. And then that menu of activities, like I said, does have a few more different ideas for you to use with that with fluency instruction. Here is a video example of echo reading that one of my colleagues, Brandy Turner, did. So I'm going to go ahead and share this with you so you can get an idea of what that might look like.
So I'm going to read a few sentences aloud, and then you are going to try to repeat it. And just try not to go too fast or too slow because you guys will be talking at the same time. Okay? And I'm going to try to do a few, like 2 sentences at a time, and then maybe we can increase it to like each paragraph at a time. But we'll start out just a few sentences. Okay? Exploring is not necessarily about finding places that you never knew existed. Think of the moon, for example.
Exploring is about finding places that you never knew existed. Think of the moon, for example.
Good. Human beings have always known it was there, but astronauts didn't explore it until 1969. For medieval Europeans, much of Asia and the Far East might as well have been the moon.
Human beings have always known it was there, but astronauts didn't explore it until 1969. For medieval Europeans, Asia and the Far East as well have been the moon.
Great job. I know it's really tricky to do this when we're reading virtually, right? Because we can't really hear each other very well, but you guys are doing awesome.
So I really like this video, and two, it kind of shows you you can still do these things virtually if you are in a situation where you do have to do some virtual after school programming or summer activities virtually. There is a way to do them, and so that's what it would look like if you had to do it virtually, but in person it would ultimately be the same thing. So these two kids did a really great job. All right, so now we are to the reflections and questions part. And this just kind of it gives you an opportunity to ask me any questions of anything maybe I wasn't clear about, or if you want more specific information about something. Again, I know that I had a friend ask about teaching phonics to children who are deaf or hard of hearing, and that is something that I'm going to look into for you. But if there's anybody else that has a question, you can just go ahead and pop it in the chat box if you want to do that.
Hey, Samantha, we had Brandy typed a little bit more of an answer about that as well in the Q&A, and I also shared that in the chat box, as well as Christy shared the link to the folder, everyone, for the presentation and all the activities that Samantha's sharing with us today. So I want to make sure to highlight that so you can access that. And I'll be sending it again later, as Samantha mentioned at the beginning of the session.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. Um, and this is just something else to, talk to the people in the school where you're going to be. And if you have questions, as far as like resources, I'm sure that, again, your school librarian can be a great friend to you during this time while you're going to be looking for books. And like I said, Christy and I have shared with you, and she said Christy put it in the chat, the folder that we put together, and we put a lot of instructional activities and free things that I could find that would be useful to you. I've uploaded them as well for you all. And I know that Susan has a survey I'm sure that she's going to ask all of you to do. And so this specific survey link or the QR code that you're seeing is just for this presentation. So I would appreciate if you could find time to do it. If you can't, that's okay. I'm sure I can ask Susan for some of her survey data, but I would greatly appreciate it if you took just a minute to do that, just to help me continue to improve anything in this presentation that I would need to improve.
Sam, we have another question. I have a third grader that is really struggling with reading, leaves out vowel sounds in spelling. Should I start from the beginning with her on phonics?
Will you read that one more time, Christy? I'm sorry, you cut out for
Yeah,
me.
Beverly Davis says, I have a third grader that is really struggling with reading. They leave out vowel sounds in spelling. Should I start from the beginning with her on phonics?
So something that I would do is I would definitely check and make sure that those students they seem to have an understanding of consonant sounds, but if they're leaving out vowel sounds, I would go back and make sure that they have that knowledge of what the vowel sounds are saying. A really good assessment that I had used in my classroom was a words their way assessment, and that just goes through. And I think you said her name was Beverly. Was her name Beverly?
Yes.
Okay. And it's a great tool to use in your classroom. But if you don't have that, I would maybe come up with like 10 words that have and I'm assuming you're talking about short vowel sounds, 10 words that have short vowel sounds, and maybe give that student those words like a spelling test and see how they do. And if they're not getting 6 to 7 out of those 10 words right, they definitely need some more practice with those short vowel sounds. So that would be, I think, would be a good place to start. And Christy, if you have anything you want to add to that, please feel free to do so.
We have some words their way info and activities that we could share with you if you would like to have that. But I agree with Sam that doing a screener to see where they're struggling, and you've already observed that they're leaving out vowel sounds. So yes, I would start with phonics and with short vowel sounds. That's the phonics skill I would work on.
All right.
Are there any other questions? Oh, there's one new message that I haven't read yet. Hang on one second.
Okay.
Beverly says, thank you.
Yes, you are welcome. And my email is there and my cell phone number. So please do not hesitate to contact me if you, get the time in the next couple of days to go through this menu of activities that I've made for you, and you're unsure on how to use them or what to do. Please do not hesitate to reach out. I was a first grade teacher for 6 years, so these foundational reading skills are something that I really enjoy, and I would be more than happy to talk through some of these things with you more if you need that. So that is all I have for our first session here. I think we're going to give you all some time to maybe take a quick break for a drink, or if you need to use the restroom. So you can go ahead, Susan.
Hi, thanks everyone. And thank you, Samantha, so much for such a great presentation on a needed topic today. We did receive I'm looking here through the chat questions. We've got a couple more things coming in. We've received from Ellen a request around just some more supports. She's looking to be a social worker and needs, says she doesn't need direct support, but more resources on the topic, and has shared her email. So we will work to get those passed along. And I see that Christy responded to her there as well. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so as Sam shared, she's got a survey there with a link. So we actually have 2 surveys during this session, which we would love for you guys to fill out both. They're the one on the screen for Samantha, who's added a QR code. I also just included in the chat the survey for attendees that we would love for you to all complete. We're actually doing these as this whole series of different topics through a grant we got from the Benedum Foundation. And we would love for you to fill that out, because we're going to be sharing some of that information from them. But also, if you need STARS hours, that is definitely where you want to be able to do that in order to get that STARS numbers to us, so that you can get your hours, and then we'll be working on processing those within the next few days. So we did break this up into 2 different sections, because we knew that we were going to have some people that could not join us for the whole 2-hour session and wanted to make that available. But I want to add in that we just had a request of somebody sharing that they would like to attend the session at 10 and didn't have the link for that. So if you didn't sign up for the 10 o'clock session and you would like to join us, I just shared the link there for the registration, also for the 10 o'clock session. But before you do that, be sure, we also really want those surveys that I just shared out there. So, and Samantha, I think, just included her survey as well in the chat too. So thank you everybody for your time. I'm going to go ahead and just leave this up, Christy and Samantha, for just a couple more minutes. And just in case people are still trying to access links, get registered, all those sorts of things. And then in about 2 minutes, I will close this down and go ahead and open up the next session. Does that sound good?
Sounds good. Thanks, Susan.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. And we hope that maybe you can join us at 10 o'clock. Thank you.